Well, welcome back to Flight Paths. My name is Simon. I'm just starting a little timer here to remind me to stop talking after 20 minutes. What I try to do here is do little 20-minute sections. We're just flying around now in South Belgium. We're just south of Brussels, so you can join me if you want live now on Microsoft Flight Simulator and on a European West server. Otherwise, just you can just join in on chat. You should find them live streaming on YouTube and on Twitch, so come along and say hello. We got to the point where Wellington in the morning around about 8 a.m. Has found out that the Prussians have been defeated over here at the battlefield of Ligny, and is now considering pulling back. And so he starts issuing his orders for the army here at Quatre Bras, which you can see the fields here below us, and starts ordering them to move back. And he does it in a clever way. He has them marching up to this sort of show themselves at this ridge and then pull back. And what I mean by that, if we just pause here and jump out, we've seen reports in previous episodes. I read some of them out. One of them was the 33rd Regiment Foot, and what he essentially does is he, as you can see down here, and this is why I love doing this flight simulator, as you can see, this is a ridge here at Quatre Bras. It comes up here, and then it would fall down to the farmhouse of Gimencourt, which is in front of us here, and then the French are on the field across on the other side with the far distant trees. Now, of course, what he wants Ney to think is that he's staying here. So he has all these fires lit, so it's obvious that there's smoke and there's meals being cooked, which was happening anyway because they were having their meal. But as he orders these troops to pull back, he does a clever thing where he makes them kind of move in an obvious way up onto this ridge, to look like troops are sort of coming in to reinforce the position, to give Ney the sense that he is going to remain here on the 17th and stand. But what these troops were actually doing was sort of coming up, presenting themselves to Ney, and then they can kind of come back here, and when they're out of the sort of sight, they then start marching off down this road north towards Genappe and eventually to the site at Waterloo. And by the time it gets to probably around about midday, 1 o'clock, then essentially all he has here is a cavalry rear guard with a battery, I believe, of Royal Horse Artillery, and one of them, of course, is commanded by our friend Captain Mercer, who wrote a book about his experiences at Waterloo, and he gets these wonderful insights. So that movement began probably after they'd eaten, after they cooked their meal for the day, and probably around about 10 o'clock in the morning it began, and these 40,000 troops would pull back over the course of the next 4 hours. Began with Byng and Picton, their divisions, and Perponcher and Merlin. And Perponcher, remember, was the sort of hero of the day on the 16th of June, defending this position, and Merlin. And they basically have Alton throwing up in the rear, and they would post sort of various battalions on the way back to pull back. And on the way back, we'll see that there's a few places where there will be little bottlenecks, and Wellington has the Brunswickers, the sort of light Jaeger units, kind of positioned to slow up any French vanguard attack. Napoleon, as we said yesterday, he arrives, comes across from the battlefield of Ligny. We've spoken about why he was so delayed. He seems to have been in something wrong with him. He's a bit lethargic. There's rumours about what illness he may or may not have had. And if you go back to the previous couple of episodes, I would talk quite a lot about those possible ailments. But he kind of has these sort of waves of sort of lethargic thing, and then it's energy, manic energy. And around about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he comes across here, decides to come across here. And when he does come across, remember we spoke about, I think it was Vivian, wasn't it? He was here, and the French came up this road from Ligny. And of course, the British cavalry were just the sort of rear guard. And so Napoleon walks up here and realizes, when he gets here to this position, that this is actually empty apart from some British cavalry pickets and a battery of Royal Horse Artillery. And he's livid with Ney, because Ney is still over here, not doing anything, thinking that the British are up here. And actually what's happened is that they've actually fallen back. So essentially what Ney has kind of done here has lost the 24 hours that Napoleon had gained in his surprise attack. He's kind of lost it here. So and because of that, then what's happened is essentially that the Wellington's retreat. So he's pulling back this way. Most of his forces have moved up here. So his rear guard is a cavalry force or light infantry in specific places. And it means that they're nimble. He has 3 columns of cavalry covering the retreat. Left-hand side, operating over here, would be Dornberg and Grant's brigades. Ponsonby and Somerset's heavy cavalry are in the centre, and Vivian and Vandeleur is on this right-hand side. Now, Napoleon tries to delay this retreat by using some artillery, but it fails, and Uxbridge can remove his withdraw his cavalry towards Genappe relatively unscathed. And they pull back to this town here. Which is Genappe. Now, ignore the bypass on the left. What you see here is this town. It has changed quite a lot. It's grown quite a lot. But I think what you can tell is how tight some of these streets are. Presumably there's a bridge in this sort of area here. And so it was essentially a bottleneck here. And it was a bottleneck today, which is the 17th. And it will be a bottleneck on the evening of the 18th when the French are trying to flow through here. We will be coming back to this position many times. Now, one of the key things not to forget at this time is the weather. I believe we've got live weather on today. This is in Belgium, and what's been happening at this time is there's been a series of very hot days, and ending in a thunderstorm. And this is essentially what happens. Round about this time, we're talking probably afternoon, 2:30, 3 o'clock. In fact, the thunderstorm breaks out right across this area. So it was affecting the Prussians and the Grouches chase, basically, of the Prussians on the over there on the east. The thunderstorm occurs here. And essentially, it's such a violent thunderstorm that it means that essentially that the fields becomes difficult to move across the fields on either side, and so the chase has to happen down the roads, the chaussee. Let's just jump back in the helicopter for a bit. Wellington had also ordered his reserves that were coming up from Nivelles to be diverted. We had a quick look, and I was trying to see if we could see any routes from this road here. But essentially, his reserves were concentrating at Nivelles. It was coming down here, and he sent a message down this road to Nivelles, essentially telling them not to come to Quatre Bras anymore, but to move up from Nivelles towards Mont St Jean. So essentially, the retreat back to Mont St Jean is skillfully done by the British. I'll call them the British or the English. Sorry, it's an Anglo-Dutch army, but I'll try to sort of simplify it a little bit. They're very skilled at pulling back. You've got the cavalry, you've got the horse artillery, and they're occasionally stopping along this road and turning around and firing at the pursuing French cavalry. And it just leads to a number of cavalry skirmishes all the way back in around Genappe. So let's do a bit of let's get down low a little bit, shall we? And in the sense of the success of the disengagement, well, the numbers says it all. The casualty figures for this day shows that the British cavalry and artillery engaged on this day suffered around about 93 casualties. So even so that's including killed, missing, and wounded. So in terms of numbers, Wellington couldn't have hoped for more. I like to try to put in these quotes here and there, so we get a sense of what the people were thinking actually on the ground, and also just to show you that sometimes what the people were thinking wasn't actually what was happening. This is a letter from Lieutenant J. Banner. He was writing this in 1837, and he was a member of the 23rd light dragoons. And he says that the rear guard had not marched. The rear guard had not marched half a mile from Quatre Bras when it was overtaken by a storm of thunder and rain, the latter falling in such abundance that it rendered the roads and ground over which the troops retreated scarcely passable. So, half a mile then, well, we're looking literally sort of here. So this point here is just pulling back half a mile back from Quatre Bras. So in this area here is where the thunderstorm comes down, and the 23rd Light Dragoons, part of that rear guard, are caught up in it. Lieutenant O'Grady, he wrote a letter on in 1835, and he said that it was one of the heaviest showers of rain that I can remember fell, which, as it wet everybody and everything, rendered firearms useless, and though the French fired a few pistol shots, I don't think they did any damage. Our engagement was therefore one of sabre and lance. So there you go. And it sounds like, at that time, if it rains that hard and you've got a loaded pistol, you might just fire it anyway, because if you don't fire it, it's just going to you're going to get sodden gunpowder in your pistol, and presumably I don't think wet gunpowder is going to do your pistol any good. Presumably it almost has like a cement effect, but if anybody knows about muskets and pistols, then please let me know. And then there's our friend Victor Hugo, obviously the Les Miserables guy. He wrote, had it not rained on the night of the 17th of June 1815, the future of Europe would have been changed. A few drops of water, more or less, prostrated Napoleon. That Waterloo should be the end of Austerlitz. Providence needed only a little rain, and an unseasonable cloud crossing the sky sufficed it for the overthrow of the world. I think that's a little bit taking a little bit far there, Victor. I think Napoleon, yes, he was hindered in his chase back up this road, but he was 4 hours behind the main body of troops going back. So I think that yes, there would probably been more casualties, but I don't think it would, in the end of the day, would have affected the result of getting to Waterloo. So Napoleon's come across, and he's brought over the corps, the 6th Corps of Laval, and he's also brought over his Imperial Guard, and he joins Ney over here. And Mercer our Captain Mercer of the Royal Horse Artillery, he ventures to say that he actually sees Napoleon himself leading the columns that were coming up the road, or essentially coming up probably from this direction over here. So he believes Napoleon was at the front, and this is corroborated as well by a General Gourgand, and he states that he that Napoleon had put himself at the head of the chasseurs, essentially showing his frustration at the delay because Ney hasn't moved. So Mercer describes at this point him firing his guns, which he says he's fired back on by some French horse artillery, which he says there was little damage. And then he describes that the rocket troop fired, so they got some rockets troop with them. Whether how effective they were, they're more of a noise thing than an actual damage thing. And then this is when he says that the rain would come. So Mercer would describe how the falling rain hid the confusion of the Allied rearguard and allowed them to escape. He remembers Lord Uxbridge, essentially the second in command of the Allied army. He was in close attendance with the rearguard, and he describes it as being sounding pretty close. He says that at one point he thought that Lord Uxbridge had cried, "By God, we are all prisoners," before jumping a garden bank to make his escape. But the French failed to take advantage of this crisis point, and Uxbridge is able to rejoin his hussars, rally them, and carry on up this road. Now, Mercer's talking at this time as well about something called a slow match. It's I think it's a piece of rope that's constantly lit, and these are dotted around the battery, and the torrential rain are extinguishing these slow matches. And they eventually managed to pull back to Genappe. So let's spin around like Kylie Minogue. So Genappe, a small village town, it's on a slight hill. It's got a valley, and with the river that's flowing through it. It's not much more than a brook, and we can probably see that when we get to here. But in this area, the type of soil, the brooks are not. It doesn't necessarily mean need to be deep or wide, but it tends to be that the area around these brooks are boggy, marshy, and difficult to cross. When Mercer gets here, he describes that when that all the houses have got their shutters closed, the place feels deserted. And he says that the lifeguards. So here we can see this brook just below us. And then it comes up the slope here. Now I think we might find differently, but I think we're talking about this area here. I'm just going to jump out here, and so we have Genappe. We're looking back now south. The French are coming down this road. Ignore the modern road that is the bypass. You can see this is the sort of route here of the old road through the town centre, and then up here towards Quatre Bras. Now, Mercer describes, so let's get this, see if we can get this right. On the high ground above the town, the lifeguards and blues draw up across the chaussee in 2 lines. Now, I think it's back through the town here. And what he's describing is it's somewhere it might even be somewhere here. If we turn around now, we should see the battlefield of... Yeah, so that's the road there towards Waterloo. And he talks about the high ground. So we could be talking here. We could be talking here. In this sort of region here. Now, say it is here. He says that the lifeguards and the blues draw up across the chaussee in 2 lines. And Mercer's troop is recalled to the rear. The French cavalry engaged the skirmishing hussars through the town. And the French horse artillery harassed the retreating dragoons from their position in a field by the bridge. So, what could he be describing? Well, I mean, if you're talking about the hill, I think if you're coming down this road here, you're looking up there, aren't you? That wood here, this area here, you would kind of describe as the hill behind the town. This makes us a sensible place, probably for the Royal Horse Artillery to be in, and they might be able to fire across. Again, when they talk about a field next to the bridge, I mean, is he talking essentially this field here? This field here might be a sort of place where the French might put their cannon. The French then, he says, engage Mercer's troop and an artillery exchange ensues. So is that an artillery exchange across the town? Now, most of these buildings, by the way, you've got to remember, probably not there in 1815. So we're talking fields. So there could be that there's an actual engagement going across, you know, in this sort of area here. They can see each other and be firing back towards them. He mentions as well that he has well-directed shell fire. So the Mercer's troop of the Royal Horse Artillery are using shells, and he persuades the French battery to quit their position after only a few shots. Now remember, if you have been watching, the ammunition wagons are pulled back, and Mercer's only carrying in his Royal Horse battery, in these casements, about 50 rounds per gun. And it's at this point that he says that the ammunition has run out. So in the course of the retirement from Quatre Bras to this position here, and the defense, or the rearguard action here at Genappe, he's managed to expend 50 rounds of ammunition, and that basically means that he's can't do anymore, and so he can just send the guns back up the road. Lord Uxbridge is believed to have had a cavalry melee in these streets here, and remember, with his hussars, and he retires to the. It says here he retires from the town to a position with a gentle elevation. Well, presumably, I mean, it's this. This is a gentle elevation, presumably. The French are reinforced by several squadrons, and a horse artillery battery draws up. And Mercer says that he's eager to hide the lack of ammunition that his battery's got. And so he proposes to his major, which is Major MacDonald, that the rocket troop fire their salvos. And he goes on to describe that. He says that the Rocketeers place a little iron triangle. So let's assume we're talking, they're in this area here. They place a little iron triangle in the road and place a rocket lying on it, and when lit, the fidgety missile begins to splutter out sparks and wriggle its tail for a second, and then darts straight up the chaussee. So he's like a kid on a fireworks night, shooting rockets down roads. The first rocket lands between the wheels of a gun, felling its handlers and making those around them run so that a whole battery stands mute and unmanned. The Rocketeers, he says, continue shooting, but the consistency and accuracy is lacking, with even one rocket doubling back towards the Rocketeers' position. And Mercer claims that this one rocket put him in more danger than any enemy fire had done that day. So that's quite amusing. The French artillery, having witnessed the ineffectualness of the rockets, returned to their guns to fire a canister at the positions from 200 yards. This causes no effect, and they are able to return to the ridge. It was at this ridge that they had to make a stand. So he here says that the cavalry had to make a stand here, essentially because the retiring infantry had got to this point, and they couldn't retire faster than the infantry already going. So we're getting a little bit of a panic here at this point, because we've got this. We've been told Mercer is sent to go and get some more ammunition for his guns. The artillery is clogging up the roads. The cavalry is going to have pulling into the fields. The Brunswickers, who are the rear guard sort of infantry, they're in a bit of a panic because they hear that the cavalry are coming up. And so they would, if the column was too slow, they would break into the fields. And essentially, this is a bit of a crisis point. I just noticed, by the way, this line here. If anyone else has noticed, you might also notice something different between the buildings on the right-hand side of that line and the buildings on the left-hand side of the line. And what you are seeing here is the line of where on the right-hand side there's satellite imagery, And on the left-hand side, you have satellite imagery, but with photogrammic imagery. So these buildings here are real photographed buildings. Yes, they're all a bit wobbly and all that, but they're not placed here. You can see that they're actual sort of representations of the real buildings, whereas over this side of this line, see that line there? It sort of comes up here. On this side, you've got generic buildings placed over the top of the imagery, and over here they've actually put in the correct building. So it looks like from this point here, just to the north of Genappe, we've got real buildings. Yeah, there you go. You can see a Renault garage here. Yeah, so from here northwards, then we're getting a little bit more real buildings. Okay, so let's take a break here, and when we come back, we'll continue the story of the retreat.